Hey guys, my name is Cody Rance and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about all the books that I read in July of 2024. If you guys missed my last month's reading wrap up, I will post it down in the description below. If you guys enjoy these monthly reading wrap ups, please give this video a thumbs up. And if you have read any of the books that I'm going to be talking about in this video, please let me know down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the books as well. And if you're looking forward to me reading any sequels to any of these books, if they have one, let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to post all of my stats for this month on the screen for you to read. If you're interested in knowing what genres I read, my ratings, my average rating for all of my books, and just all that stuff, you can look at that right now. Let's go ahead and start going in order of all the books that I read. I read 9 books total this month. I did have 1 DNF. I am going to talk about the DNF first, and then I'll go in order of all the books that I did read. My 1 DNF for this month, I read towards the end of the month, but I'm just going to get it out of the way, and that was Assistant to the Villain. Now, this is a debut book, I believe, by this author. I heard about her through Twitter and TikTok, and her name is Nicole Maehrer, I believe that's how you say her name. If that's wrong, I am deeply sorry to the author that I'm butchering your name. I only got through 14% of the book according to Goodreads. I was on chapter 4 when I decided to DNF. Part of the reason I decided to DNF the book is I just thought the pacing was really slow, and there was a frog with a crown. That was enough for me, honestly. I thought the frog with the crown was weird. I was like, why is there a frog with a crown? If you're wondering what this story is about, it's about this girl named Evie. She ends up working for a villain that's like near her village because she needs money to take care of her sick dad. And it's very strange because he has all these other people working for him, like in an office setting, and I just don't understand why a villain would need an office. Like, it's very strange to me. And she hurts her butt and has like naughty dreams about her villain boss. And I read 3 chapters and I decided this was just not my vibe. I just did not get it. I do not understand the appeal to this book. If it's something you love, congratulations. It's just not for me, and that's totally fine. I know there is a sequel coming out to this called Apprentice to the Villain. So clearly she becomes an apprentice. Good for you, Miss Evie. But I just found this book to be a little boring, and the pacing wasn't my favorite, and I thought the storyline in general was weird. I tried to give it a chance because everyone on TikTok talked about this book. It's just not great, so I DNF'd it. I do like the cover. I think the cover is really cool, and I like the idea of the story is interesting, but the execution just wasn't it for me. I did DNF this book, so I will not rate it because I didn't actually read the book, but yeah, not a great book in my eyes. Now I'm going to talk about all the books that I did actually finish reading in July. Like I said, I did read 9 total books this month, and all of them hurt me. I feel like I went through a lot of trauma and mind games this month. I'm going to need therapy, not just because of these books, just for life reasons, but especially for some of these books because they did deeply hurt me and I did cry with a good chunk of them. So let's hear about my trauma. So the first book that I read this month was Dark Matter by Blake Crouch. This is a thriller. Now, the reason I decided to read this book is because of the TV show. I had heard about this book and decided that I wanted to watch the TV show instead because I was like,
nah, I'll just watch the TV show. I'm sure I don't really need to read the book.
I watched 3 episodes of the show and was like, okay, this is crazy. I now need to read the book. The show was so good, it convinced me, hey, I should read the book. Unfortunately for the book, I thought the show was better than the book. I did stop watching the show at episode 3 and read the book before finishing the show. And I have to say the show was way better. The show is a 5-star. The casting was incredible. I loved having all the extra information being given to me about all these other characters that he doesn't really touch on in this book. This is like a very fast-paced version of the show. It's like maybe 50% of what happens in the show. The show is way more interesting. I would just recommend watching the show instead of reading the book, and I don't say that often. Usually people say
the book is better.
In this case, it's not. I did rate this really high because I do think the story in general is really, really interesting. If you want to know what the story is about, it's about this man named Jason Desson, who is a school teacher. He's married, has a son. He lives a pretty happy life. He goes out one night to go celebrate his friend's accomplishment for winning an award. And during that night, he gets kidnapped by a masked man and then drugged and knocked out. And when he wakes up, no one in his life knows who he is. Like, all the people he knew, they don't know him. They are not in his life like that. Like, his wife isn't his wife. His son doesn't exist. He has a whole new job, a whole new career, and a whole new award on his shelf that he didn't have before. And in this book, he's trying to figure out what happened to him that night and how to get back to the world that he is so familiar with. It's a very interesting read, really fast paced. I did read it pretty quickly. I did enjoy it, but like I said, the show is much better. You get a lot more perspectives of a lot of the characters. This is primarily just like 99% Jason. The rest of the book, you don't really touch on anyone else except somebody else, but I don't want to spoil it. If you guys do want to read this book, just watch the show. The show is better. I'm so sorry. I got Apple TV Plus literally just to watch this show, and it was $10 well spent. I do think it is a good show. So yeah, just watch the show instead of reading the book. If you want to know my rating for this book, I gave it a 4.5 because it is, like I said, a good book. But if you do decide, I just want to read the book and not watch the show because like it'll be shorter for you to read the book, you will still have a good time. This is a great story. It really made me think. I do think about some of these things in this book to this day. And I read this, like, I think July 2nd. And I'm still thinking about things from this book a month later. So that's why I gave it a high rating. I just think about a lot of the things in this, and I think they really changed me. Like, there's certain things about this book where I'm like, oh, wow, like all these decisions really impact my life and can really change the course of my life. Like, I need to make better decisions is one big thing I took away from this. So this is a very good book. I do recommend consuming this story in any capacity that you can, either the book or the show. The second book that I read this month was actually a new release by Riley Sager called Middle of the Night. And the reason I read this is because so many other book talkers and booktubers were talking about this book. And I was just so curious about what happened in this because everyone seemed to have like mediocre reviews of this book. And I was just so curious about the story that I wanted to see, like, is it really as bad as people are saying it is? I don't think so. I actually really like this book. It follows this man named Ethan Marsh, whose best friend Billy went missing when they were children. They were in Ethan's backyard. Side of their tent they were sleeping in was slashed open, and Billy has been missing ever since. This does a lot of time jumps, which I think can be a little confusing, and I think that's why people rated it so poorly, because a lot of this is just going back in the past and you're learning a lot of information about Ethan and Billy. But I actually think it's very fascinating to learn about all these characters. I think it actually builds a lot of suspense and makes you really think about who could have done it. I did guess who did it, like who was the reason Billy is missing, and I was right, which did kind of disappoint me. I did predict it in less than 60 pages, which I don't know if that's just a flex because I'm good at predicting things in thrillers, but it did make the ending reveal a little lackluster for me because I was like, oh, I was right. But it was still a good book. I did like learning about all of the characters. I did have a lot of things that I tabbed because I did find a lot of things interesting, and I was trying to solve the case while I was reading it, and I did really enjoy the book. I rated this book a 3.75 because I did enjoy it. It is the first book I've ever read by Riley Sager. It is not the only book I own by him. I am excited to read more of his books because I did enjoy it. The writing definitely needs some work. It's just a little flat for me personally. I never read the sentence and went, oh my God, wow, what a sentence. I never thought that. I don't think it's for everybody, and I don't think everybody would enjoy reading it, but I did enjoy it myself. The next book I read was a novella for the Powerless series, and it's called Powerful by Lauren Roberts. This is the novella after Powerless, and I wanted to read Powerful before I read the new release that came out this month. I did consume this in less than a day. I didn't have that many tabs. This story takes place during the same time as Powerless, but you are learning about Adina, who is Peyton, the main character, and Powerless's best friend. So it's basically just telling you what Adina did and what happened to her and just like more details about that. This book was very sad. I did enjoy having more Adina content. I liked Adina, and I do think that this little novella was better written than Powerless, which is really funny to me. I gave this book a 3.5 because I did enjoy the little love story that happened in this book. Do I think this book was necessary to read? No. I have, spoiler alert, read the second book in the trilogy, and I don't think you needed to read this at all. I felt like this was more of a cash grab, if anything, and it's so small. But yeah, this is Powerful by Lauren Roberts. 3.5. I would probably just skip it, to be honest, if you read the series. The next book I read is probably my biggest disappointment of the year because I was so excited to start the Harry Potter series because I've never read all of them. And I started with the first book, Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, and I was really let down by how bored I was a lot of the time reading this. I did not like really anyone in this book except Hagrid. In this house, we are a Hagrid stan. I love Hagrid. I gave this book an extra point just because of Hagrid alone, and rightfully so. Harry is definitely fat-phobic and rude and a bully. I think Ron is insufferable. I absolutely hate Ron. I'm so sorry. Why does anyone like Ron? I actually like Draco. I thought Draco was funny. I would have wanted to be his friend. And I know that he's supposed to be a bad guy, but I loved him. He did do some really bad things, but I'm also like, can you blame him? These people are terrible. I don't know what that says about me. And I'm a Hufflepuff. Like, is it normal for a Hufflepuff to like Slytherin? I don't know anything about the Harry Potter world. I'm only one book in. I rated this book a 2.5. I have not thought about this book one single time since reading it. I almost decided to not read the rest of the series just because I hated this book so much. Sorry about all the construction noise. I'm having my water line replaced. I currently do not have any water in my house. My water line is off, and it has been off since yesterday, and they're fixing my water line, and it's a whole mess. So if you hear construction, I'm so sorry. The next book I read was my first 5-star of the month. It was Caraval by Stephanie Garber, and I'm so excited to talk about this book. I absolutely ate this book up. It was so dramatic. This honestly felt like a season of American Horror Story for me. It follows this girl named Scarlett and her sister Donatella. They get invited to a festival called Caraval, and during that festival, Scarlett has to solve a crime about who took her sister Donatella to be able to win one wish. Now, Donatella gets kidnapped. Scarlett ends up working with a man who helped them get there. There's a little romance in the book, and it's very, very exciting. There's death, there's mystery, crime solving, fantasy, magic. It's super, super fun, and I highly recommend this book. I rated this a 5 stars, like I said, and I do think this is a really amazing series, and I cannot wait to start the second book eventually. Part of the reason I wanted to start this book is I wanted to read Once Upon a Broken Heart, and I know that you have to read the Caraval trilogy before you read Once Upon a Broken Heart, because there is a character in Once Upon a Broken Heart that is in Caraval, and like some of the things in Caraval, like in the series, take place during the same time as Once Upon a Broken Heart, and I heard that your reading experience is better if you have read this first, which I totally get, and so I'm doing my due diligence and reading this series first, and I'm glad I did because it's so fun and interesting, and now I want to read everything Stephanie Garber has ever written. I would read her grocery list. I'm not kidding. But yeah, this is a really great book. 5 stars. Highly recommend. The next book I read, I was so excited to read, even though I hated Powerless, which is hilarious, but I was so excited to read the sequel because I just wanted to know what the frick happened, even though I hated that story so much. I read Reckless by Lauren Roberts, the highly anticipated sequel to Powerless. Oh my God. It's so good, guys. I'm so happy to report that I had so much fun reading this book. I actually read this book on my Kindle because my book was late being delivered. So I read it on my Kindle and then went back and added all of my annotations that I made in my Kindle. I don't really make that many annotations when I read on a Kindle, but I really enjoyed this book a lot. I gave it 5 stars and it absolutely deserved it. And I know a lot of people who really liked Powerless didn't like this book as much as Powerless and gave it like mid ratings. I liked it a lot and I don't know why I liked it so much. I just ate this book up. I love Kai so much, and anything with Kai I devoured and enjoyed every single second. I was kicking and giggling. I love the banter between Peyton and Kai so much. Also Kit. What you did at the end of this book is prison worthy. I need the next book now. That velvet box, even though I knew what the F he was going to do with that velvet box, I was still shocked. Man, what the heck are you doing, sir? What is your plan? What is going on? And I need the 3rd book now, Lauren Roberts. Give it to me right now, ma'am. I gave it 5 stars. I would love to read the 3rd book immediately, and I'm so sad I have to wait till next year. The next book I read is also an anticipated new release, and it's Leather and Lark by Brynne Weaver. This is the sequel to Butcher and Blackbird. This basically follows Lark, who is Sloane's best friend from Butcher and Blackbird. Lark is hilarious, and she's also an SK. Yeah, she literally turns a man into a coffee table. It's freaking hilarious. And she does a marriage of convenience to Lachlan, and they're trying to solve a mystery, and they have a lot of drama going on in this book. At one point, it felt like a Saw movie because Lark was trapped in a giant oven, like a freaking rotisserie chicken. Yeah, it was absolutely bonkers, and I really, really enjoyed it. I did rate this book a 4.5. It just didn't give me that 5-star feeling, but I did really, really enjoy the book. After reading this book, this is when I read Assistant to the Villain and DNF'd it. Now, the next book I'm going to talk about that I did finish is called Filthy Rich Fae. I'm going to have to just post it on the screen because I did read it on my Kindle. This is my best friend Maya's favorite book. She says this book is a 6/7 star book for her. This is her absolute favorite book in the entire world. I actually bought her this book because she wanted it so much. I got it for her. She has a special sprayed edges edition and she really, really loved it. And she said that I had to read it. So I read it, unfortunately, and I hated it. I gave it a 1 star. And to be honest, that was generous. I wish I could give that book 0 stars. If that was a thing, I would do it because I hated it. It's about this girl named Kate who sells her soul to a fae mob guy, basically, named Lachlan. So I did read 2 books with somebody named Lachlan. What are the chances, honestly? She sells her soul to this Lachlan guy, and she basically just spends a lot of the time hanging out with him, going to parties for absolutely no reason, and literally nothing happens for 90% of the book. And then at the very end, you find out a bunch of stuff. Then you're like, oh, okay. And then the book's over. I don't care about what happened to Kate. I actually found her really insufferable. I thought Lachlan and her had absolutely no chemistry whatsoever. There was some pretty quotes in there that I did highlight in my Kindle, but literally the last 50% of the book just like went over my head because I just absolutely did not like or care about anyone. If I had read this book on my own, I would have DNF'd it at like 10-11% because by then I was like, oh, this book is not for me, because it felt very mafia to me, and I don't really like mafia type books. Like right now I'm reading Daisy Hates and it feels very mafia, and it's part of the reason why I'm probably not enjoying it that much. But I do not enjoy mafia books at all. It's just not something for me, and it really has mafia vibes. So if you're not into mafia, do not read this book. You will have a terrible time like I did. And the last book I read this month is literally one of the best books I've ever read in my entire life. Like, I was sobbing at like 4 or 5 in the morning reading this book. I stayed up all night and read this book, even though I have stuff going on today. I'm literally having my entire driveway in the front ripped open so they could replace my water line. I have people in my house going to my basement doing shit, and I stayed up and finished this book. It's Magnolia Parks by Jessa Hastings. Look at all of my tabs. There are so many tabs. I think this is my most tabbed book besides Happy Place. Happy Place is still my favorite book, but this is a close second. This is one of the best books I've ever read in my entire life. I am so excited to read the rest of the series. Like, oh my god, the ending of this book, I'm still flabbergasted by. If you want to know what this book is about, it's about this very rich lady named Magnolia Parks who's in love with her. Oh my god, the sounds coming from my house are actually crazy right now. We're just gonna ignore them. Oh my god, these sounds are crazy. Oh my god. If you want to know what this book is about, it's about Magnolia Parks, who lives in London. Basically everyone in this book lives in London. She has a lot of money and she has a lot of drama, mostly with her ex-boyfriend BJ Valentine. Yeah, that's his name. That's the name that Jessa thought was like gonna hit, and you know what, she was right. There was a lot of hitting in this book, a lot of violence. It was actually crazy. But it follows Magnolia Parks and BJ's relationship. I actually hate BJ with my entire soul. He's the worst. And I don't understand all you TikTokers going, oh my god, Magnolia and BJ. BJ's the absolute worst, and I hate him. I've never hated a character more in my life since reading November 9th. Okay, November 9th is like puppies and kittens compared to BJ. BJ is the absolute worst. I hate him. I want to like put it in bold and italicized. I hate him. And there's this big reveal at the end because you're trying to find out who BJ cheated on Magnolia with and who is the reason they broke up. You find out who it is. I literally put the book down and was like, I don't want to read anymore. I don't want to know anything. And then you read all the details about the nights that he cheats on Magnolia, like the one that you've been wondering about this entire book, and you read it in details and it makes you hate him more. And then at the end of the book, you're just like, oh my god. Like, you hate everything and everybody. And I really relate, really sadly relate to what Magnolia went through in this book, because I've been cheated on in a very similar manner with a very similar person. And it really pisses me off to this day. And it's been a long time. I'm still so angry about it. And I understand what this bitch is going through. I know that pain and suffering and hurt that you have to live with, because all these that she calls her friends, absolute awful people who knew and didn't say shit. And I relate, Miss Magnolia. Literally had the same thing happen to me. Wasn't in a bathtub, but it's very similar. But oh my god, I know what she's going through. And oh my god, it hurt me so much. It hurt me to read it because it, honestly, rereading this made me relive my own trauma again. And that's part of the reason I probably sobbed at like 4 or 5 in the morning reading about what happened to her. Because I'm like, I know exactly what you're going through. And I'm so sorry, ma'am. I'm so sorry. But yeah, this is a 6-star read for me. One of the best books I've ever read in my life. This is probably my second favorite book of all time now. I highly recommend reading this series. But yeah, this was the last book I read, and today is literally the 30th of the month. I do not think I can read another book this month because literally this is my last day off for the rest of the month. So I don't think I'm going to be able to read another book today. So clearly I have a lot going on. You hear it. There's a lot happening right now. But yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and end this video because it's getting really loud and I don't know when it's gonna stop. I'll see you guys in my next monthly reading wrap up video.